Hi, it's Canadian Hubby. A couple years ago, I traveled Seville, Ronda, Granada, and Barcelona in Spain. I enjoyed nearly everything I ordered at restaurants. It is true, even bad food in Spain is still better than average food in North America. However, the biggest disappointment came from the most famous Spanish dish, paella. At a restaurant in Seville which specializes in rice dishes, the paella was very undercooked and they used frozen vegetables. I guess I should have listened to other travelers' advice not to order paella outside Valencia. Let's move on to my version of paella. Ingredient wise, it is standard. There is smoked paprika and saffron from the trip. One thing that is not standard is potatoes. I guess the authentic version calls for artichokes, but we do not grow artichokes in Canada, so I substituted with tomatoes, which turned out to be really nice. Once I was done with vegetable prep, I seared the chicken thighs. Normally, I do not like heavy searing for home cooking because of the smoke and oil splashing, but I ensured that I had good searing on the chicken this time because I'm using saffron, which is very expensive, and I did not want to compromise. When the chicken thighs were done, I sauteed the vegetables and added smoked paprika and tomato paste. The chicken thighs went back in along with precisely 350 grams of water, which I'll talk about it later, and a couple pinches of saffron. Once the mixture harmonized, I added 300 grams of short grain rice, brought the whole thing to a boil, covered and cooked for 20 minutes on a low heat. Now there are a few things that we need to talk about. First, I used Korean rice instead of Spanish rice. Since both are short grain rice, it worked out really well. Second, paella should be cooked uncovered, but I find it a lot easier to control the doneness, moisture level, and consistency of rice with the cover on. Lastly, I used 300 grams of rice. If I were making just plain rice, I would use 450 grams of water. But since the vegetables and chicken release their moistures, the paella would be too wet if I used all 425 grams of water. So I used about 80% of that, which turned out to be about 350 grams of water. After 20 minutes, I tasted the rice and it was perfectly cooked with some firmness. The peas went in and all I need to do was to boil off any excess water and crispen up the bottom. I guess they call it socarrat in Spanish. Anyhow, at this point, you just need to use all your senses to get this right. You want to look at the edges and poke the bottom. You need to listen how the sizzling sound changes as water evaporates and rice gets crispy. You should be smelling toasty aroma of rice, never burnt. The end result was very satisfying. I have made this dish a couple times in the past, and this one was the best. The rice was just right and the sauerkraut was almost perfect, maybe a bit overdone to my taste. It certainly was better than the paella in Seville.